Good morning, students. In the previous class we talked about general things in genetics. Now today I am going to deal with experiments done by Mendel, and from his experiments he has formulated certain laws. Now before moving on to experiments and those laws, certain things must be clear and understood by you. Okay, now I will briefly tell you which were the important steps of the experiments performed by Mendel. Now I told you that Mendel selected garden pea plant. Now in garden pea plant, the first thing Mendel did was selection of parents. Okay. Now in the cross there are two plants involved, okay, and by observation Mendel selected those plants for experiment. Now those plants will be treated as parents. So one male parent, other plant becomes female parent. Okay. So this is how selection of parents was done. Obviously always remember that in the experiments when plants are selected, those plants must be healthy growing plants, they should not be infected plants. So that is also applicable over here. So Mendel, first thing is he selected parents. Then cross pollination. I am sure you are familiar with the concept of pollination, because in plants, in flowering plants, pollination is a prerequisite, is a necessary step to produce fruits and seeds. Without pollination there is no fertilization, and if there is no fertilization, no fruits and seeds. So pollination is very important. But when we call pollination as cross pollination, when there are two plants, two different plants. So cross pollination was done by Mendel. Of course here now it is an experiment, it is a controlled experiment. So transfer of pollen grains or process of pollination will not occur naturally. Here process of pollination was done by hand. Okay, that is manual pollination was done in the experiments, and that is cross pollination. That is from male plants pollen grains were transferred on the female flower, that is on the stigma. Of course after pollination there will be formation of fruits and seeds as a result of fertilization. Fruits and seeds are formed. So those round pea seeds which we eat as a vegetable, now those seeds, they represent new generation. Okay, because now these seeds will have characters combined from the two parents. Okay. So new generation, or they are called hybrid plants, or Mendel called or referred as first filial generation or F1 generation. Okay. So after crossing two parents, the next generation which is obtained is a hybrid one, and it is F1 generation. Okay. Then first generation is obtained. Now remember that in genetics scientist is interested in studying many generations. So what Mendel did, after F1 generation was obtained, he wanted to produce the next generation, that is F2 F2 generation, second filial generation. But then how did he obtain F2 generation? By self-pollination. Now here he did not allow two different plants to participate in the cross. He used same plant for next generation. Okay, so remember that in the beginning plants were two, male and female, and F1 generation was obtained. But to obtain F2 generation, Mendel did self-pollination, that is only one plant or only one parent was involved in the experiment. Okay? So, this is how in short steps were carried out, and every time Mendel properly formulated his results, and all those results and observations were properly recorded by him. Okay? I am sure you must have understood till here. Okay? Now moving on to next thing. Now we are talking about a plant, a pea plant. Okay? Now it is a plant means it has roots in the soil, stem, leaves are there are flowers. Flowers after pollination and fertilization will form fruits, there will be seeds, correct? So all these characters or all these parts will be seen in the plant. Now in garden pea plant, there is one thing which is called contrasting characters. Okay? Now I am going to explain this concept of contrasting characters. Now in garden pea, if I consider one character, that is height of the plant. Okay? Which character I am taking? Height. Height of plant or length of stem. Okay. In garden pea, the situation is either plant will be tall or what is opposite of tall? Short. Or dwarf. Okay. So, this is something which is not seen in all the plants. Let me tell you. In garden pea, there are only two possibilities for every character. Okay. So, as far as height is concerned, there are only two possibilities. Either plant will be tall or it will be dwarf or short. You will not find a plant with medium height. Okay? Students, this you have to remember. In other organisms or in other plants, this may not be seen. Okay? So, this is what I mean by contrast. Contrast of tall is short. So, tall and short or tall and dwarf are two contrasting characters as far as height is concerned. Okay? I will take another example. Flower color. Now in flower color also, again only two possibilities. Either flowers are violet or colored or contrast white. No in between third color. Okay. So contrasting colors means for every character only two extreme possibilities are seen. Understood? So this is how in garden pea plant 7 such characters with their contrasting possibilities were considered or were taken into account by Mendel. Okay? So now I want you to keep your textbook open in front of you. I have this textbook with me, you can have a look. And on page number 23, if you look at the table 3.4, where 7 pairs of contrasting characters are given. So I will read out. First one is seed shape, it is given. So in seed shape, seeds will be either round or wrinkled. Then seed color, so seeds will be either yellow or green. Flower color, violet or white. Pod shape, full or constricted. Now I need not explain to you because pictures are already given, so you can have a look at the picture and understand how that character would look like. Then color of the pod, green or yellowish. Flower position, axial or terminal, and stem height, tall or dwarf. Okay? So this is how for every character there are two extreme possibilities only, and because of this, now this was coincidence, because of such situation that for every character there are two contrasts, no intermediate possibility, Mendel could formulate his laws very well and he was very successful because of this particular reason. Okay, I think you must have understood all these characters. Now I will move on ahead. Okay. Now we will consider one cross or one experiment. Okay. Now I am going to take height of stem as a character. See what I am writing on the board. A pure, tall pea plant is crossed with pure dwarf pea plant. Okay. So here the two parents, remember what was the first step of Mendel's experiment? Parents are selected. So here one parent is tall, whereas the other parent or the other plant is dwarf or short. Now, how to write this cross? See what I am writing. The first step in the cross is, I have written word phenotype. Okay. Tall pea plant. Now this is a cross mark which is showing crossing. Okay, because remember, first cross performed by Mendel was between two different plants. So that is indicated by this cross. So one parent is tall and other parent is dwarf. And now what is the meaning of the word phenotype? Now phenotype means external appearance of an individual. So if I am talking about a human being, a person can be tall, a person can be short, a person may have average height. So I am talking about his external appearance. A person may have curly hair, I am talking about his phenotype. If a person has white skin color, again I am talking about his phenotype. Suppose if I am describing some plant, a plant has red flowers. So red flower is a phenotype because that is telling me the external appearance. I will be then able to imagine that a particular plant produces red colored flowers. So remember that if we talk about external appearance of the individual, we are talking about phenotype. So I have written tall cross with dwarf. Okay. Now genotype we have to write. Okay, now what is genotype? Who decides whether plant will be tall or short? I have told you, genes are deciding the characters. So obviously whether plant is tall or it is short, it is decided by the genes. Okay. Now how to write genes? Now here a very simple method was used by Mendel while writing the genotype. He assigned one alphabet for every character. So here for height character, height of stem, Mendel used alphabet T. T governing or T helping us understand whether plant is tall or short. Okay, now for tall, Mendel has used capital form of the letter, so capital T, and for dwarf, instead of using a new letter, he has used the same letter but lowercase form, so small t. Okay, remember. Now here this is a very important step, students. Many a times what happens is capital T for tall, this is written correctly, but students by mistake use letter D for dwarf. That is not to be done. We have to keep the same letter, but once letter will be capital and the next character, while denoting the next character, the other character, same letter in the lowercase form is to be used. Okay, so capital T for tall and small t for dwarf. Now, after this, gametes are produced. Okay. Now, remember that when gametes are produced, gametes carry 50% genes from parents. Okay. Remember this, when gametes are produced, every gamete will have 50% genetic information only. So, when there are 2 genes in the parent, in both the cases see here, when gametes are formed, gamete will have 50% of it only. So, I have written capital T singly as well as small t singly, because tall parent had 2 genes for height, but out of the 2 genes only one comes into the gamete. Similarly, for a dwarf parent, out of the 2 small t letters, that is out of the 2 genes for dwarfness, only one comes into the gamete. Okay. So, this is going to be male gamete, other is going to be female gamete, and you know that fertilization means there is union of gametes. So, I will show union of gametes. See what combination I have obtained now. Capital T gene comes from tall parent and small t gene comes from dwarf parent. Okay? So, now in this generation I am getting combination of one gene capital T for tallness and other gene is small t governing dwarfness. Okay? So, capital T small t is the combination obtained and this combination is F1 generation. Okay, students, I will repeat now this quickly. Parents are tall crossed with dwarf. I told you that one letter or alphabet was assigned by Mendel for every character. So, for height character, height of the stem character, letter used was a T. Capital T was used for tallness and small t was used for dwarfness. I know that there might be a question in your mind that why capital T for tall and why small t for dwarf, why not the other way, okay? But that I am going to explain little later. So, capital T for tall, small t for dwarf. Now, you will see that capital T is written twice, even small t is written twice. The reason is, in living organisms, every character is controlled by 2 genes. Okay, students, remember that in all higher plants and animals, there are 2 genes for each character. That is why letters are repeated. Then gametes, as I told you, they have only 50% information, and that is why only single T inside the circle indicates that it is a gamete, and then union of gametes. So, combination is one capital T and one small t. Now, students, here is something different, unexpected that was observed by Mendel. Now, what that is? Capital T is for tall, correct? Small t is for dwarf. So, now F1 generation is a combination of tall and short, but when seeds obtained of F1 generation were grown by Mendel, all tall plants were obtained. Something that was not expected. So, here what happened? In F1 generation, there was one gene for tallness, the other gene was for dwarfness. Even though gene for dwarfness was present in the plant, plants were all tall, not even a single dwarf plant was obtained. And here Mendel was extremely surprised to obtain this kind of result. That is, by crossing tall and dwarf plants, in the F1 generation, all tall plants were obtained, as if character dwarf disappeared. And this was a very surprising result. And Mendel wanted to find out why this happened, why expression of dwarfness was not seen. And so he continued his experiment further, but we will talk about it afterwards. Okay? So, understand this particular part very well, how to write the cross and how to get F1 generation. Okay? So, this is how experiment was performed by Mendel. Other things we will do next time.